Welcome to the Lead Magnets Podcast, a show for business leaders who want clarity on their marketing direction to help them grow and scale their business to the next level. I'm Julie Nichols, owner of Julie Nichols Marketing.
And I'm Dan Gershenson of Caliber Brand Strategy and Content Marketing. We are two fractional chief marketing officers who lead marketing departments for small and medium-sized businesses who want to level the playing field and level up.
And today we are talking about budgeting for your marketing. Dun, dun, dun. How much is this gonna cost, Dan? It's so expensive. Why? Marketing is expensive. What the heck? So we're going to get into it. This is going to be especially helpful for business owners who are seriously considering starting marketing efforts because they're at a point where they're like, I'm ready to grow and scale. And like, I need to start getting into this, to kind of give you an idea around what things cost in marketing.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about, what it costs to hire the right people, what it costs to do things, different in marketing initiatives, all that jazz. So Dan, you want to get us started?
Yes, absolutely. I think, budgeting is one of those things that is very hard, I think, for small and medium-sized businesses to get a real handle on. I think they sometimes are not always judging it in the right context. For example, is it a salaried person that you're thinking of bringing on, or is it a contractor kind of person? And there's no necessarily one right or wrong there, but I do think that you have to, first things first, come in with this mindset of I am investing in this stuff. I'm investing, I'm not spending. And there's a difference there because when you're investing, you're in it for the long haul. And that doesn't mean in the long haul necessarily with a particular vendor, but it always kind of makes me scratch my head when people go, okay, well, I'm going to spend on marketing as if it was not a department like the others. Like we don't say something like, I'm not going to have HR this year, or I'm not going to have sales. I'm not going to have the finance department or billing or whatever. Like it's not an optional thing if you really look at it in terms of how you're going to budget for it. So before you even think about the actual dollars, then really, what is it that your goals are? Because you are going to want to do this for a while, hopefully in some form for the life of your company.
Yeah, you should really always be marketing, ABM, because it's something that you need to be continually reminding people that you exist. You have to make sure that you're out there, that you're putting out quality content, that you're like, hey guys, remember we're here. It's not something that's really ever going to end, and it really should always be a part of your business's budget to invest in, because it will, over time, it will really show you the dividends. The general rule of thumb for how much you should spend on marketing is anywhere from about 4 to 10% of your annual revenue. So I would say it really kind of depends on how aggressive you want to be, on how quickly you really want to make an impact, how quickly you want to get yourselves out there. But I would say a good general rule of thumb is about 6%. Would you say that's true, Dan?
Yeah, it's definitely in that range, I think. If you're a newer company, it may even go beyond 10%, really, because you may need to spend even more on marketing out of the gate. Let's say that you're a startup, you've gotten a couple rounds of funding or something, but now you need to get the word out. You're an established somewhat company, but it can't just live in an incubator. It's got to be promoted. So, but you're absolutely right. I think that's a good range to start with. And it's probably more than people realize. They probably right now may not even be putting 1% towards marketing, but they should use that as a baseline.
Yeah. And it's like, the question always comes up, and especially for smaller companies, is do you even want to grow? Some
Yeah,
companies, they just kind of stay stagnant and they have their clients and they really don't put much into business development because they're kind of happy staying where they are. That's one way to go. But if you really want to grow your business, like marketing is such a critical component of that. And so that's you really have to decide on where do you want to go? What do you want your
yeah,
business to be? That's really
yeah,
the overarching concept on that you have to decide. Because if you're like, you know what? I have 10 clients and I'm good with that. Well, what if one of them suddenly drops off the face of the earth? What if they close
right,
their business and then you're like, oh crap, now what am I going to
yeah,
do? But now
right,
you're scrambling to catch up because you haven't been doing the work and putting your business out there. So now to replace that client, you got to, sprint to really
yeah,
fill that hole. And so the concept is like you need to constantly be putting yourself out there so that, if 10 clients really is all that you can handle and you don't want to scale really, like then you've got a waiting list. You've got
yeah,
plans in place. So can you speak more to
yeah.
that, Dan?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that aren't always measured, but boy, they're powerful, which is number one, what's your average sale? What kind of average sale are you talking about? If you're devoting, let's just say, I don't know, $3,000 to, let's say, a marketing person or firm, but your average sale is like $10,000 or could be in that neighborhood, then one sale will definitely give you a lot back for that investment, especially if there's some influence there from that person you brought on. So, how many either clients or sales, number of sales, do you need? And I don't think people really buckle down and think about that. They just say, well, I'll let you know. I'm just going to keep spending or I'm just going to keep, trying to get as many as possible. And yeah, you can't have a true goal without having something to aim for and knowing how do your numbers really average out. The other one, though, is lifetime value of the client. So let's say that somebody is, X amount of $1,000 right now per month for you, but you have them stay on for the next at least 5 years. So, what does that add up to? Suddenly, you're not just talking about a month or even a year, you're talking about a multi-year conversion that you have. So, I think instead of looking at it as, oh, this is 3 grand a month, well, heck, it could be 60, $100,000 or more if you tend to hang on to these clients long enough in a recurring way. And when I really wrapped my head around that, it kind of made me just because, you know, unless you're doing a project of 30 days or less, you're going to probably have something where that lifetime value is a decent amount of at least a year, because there's multiple challenges that they need help with.
When you are considering, what kind of marketing help you're going to need, like Dan said, do the math, figure out how much value you're going to be getting out of that client on average for each lead that comes in and turns over. Now, when on the subject of leads, here's another thing I want you to also consider, because when you decide to really invest in marketing, you really also need to make sure that you're ready for when those leads start coming in. And how are those leads going to be handled? Because you need to really understand marketing is not responsible for sales.
Hmm.
So a lot of
Yes.
businesses have this misconception. They think marketing, why aren't we making any sales? And it's like, okay, well, that's not the function of marketing. Marketing's function is to bring the people to your door, and the sales function is what converts those leads into customers.
Yeah.
So make sure that you have those things set up in the back end that, if you need to hire a salesperson, or if you can't afford to yet, figure out like what's the process going to be once those leads come in, so that you can make sure that those people aren't just like falling off the face of the earth and you're just never making contact with them. You're never, talking to them. You're never, you're not setting up calls with them. You need to make sure that those systems are in place before you really start marketing, so that you're ready when those leads
Yeah.
come in, because that would just be a huge waste of money and time for everybody.
Yeah. It's um, think about it's a very basic question, but it's a real one. How many clients do you need? And if you can't answer that, or you say, well, as many as possible, there's no, and you don't have any kind of number to go with it, then you're just kind of flogging around aimlessly to look at, uh, let's just try to get as many as we can through the door. To your point, Julie, it's really then, if you do that, what if you happen to have this issue where all these folks come in? And I've seen people talk about this stuff and they're like, well, really anybody can be a good lead for me. Oh, okay, so let's play a little game here then. If anybody and everybody came to your door, your office tomorrow, because it's anybody, right? Then could you handle it? Hell no, you can't. So what would happen then? They'd get pissed off, they'd go to your website, they'd crash your website. What how many could you comfortably have? And the best way to think about that is, I have this ideal client that I want, and here's how many I would love to have. It doesn't mean you're going to have those all the time, but it's something to shoot for. So what do you need, backing out of that? What do you need to spend or to invest in order to get a certain amount of those, let's say, per month? And do you have the manpower to be able to handle them? If, the only one you've got is some guy who's a couple days from retirement and he's not going to be able to handle all that, then you probably should do something where you invest in an individual in-house or contract with somebody.
Yeah.
You got to do that.
Yeah. And, do you have those disqualifiers in place? Because if suddenly the world shows up at your door, you want to make sure that you're actually talking to the right clients and not just the world. So you want to
Yeah.
have those systems in place as well, to let the people that know that really aren't the right client for you, that, like they shouldn't even really be moving forward in the process.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about actual dollars that people should be thinking about, because I feel that, a lot of people that I talk to get sticker shock when we talk about marketing. So if we're talking just about like working with a marketing contractor, there are lots of different kinds of marketing contractors. There's content writers, there's copywriters, which are, by the way, people don't really seem to know this, that content writing and copywriters are different. Content writers being the people who actually generate the story, the blogs, the words, and copywriting is really for ads. It's really like trying to make those sales.
Yep.
There's web developers, ad nauseum. There's all these different roles, right? And those roles, people price things differently. They sometimes price by project, they sometimes price by the hour. But to give you a good general idea, if you were to work with, like, let's say, a marketing strategist, somebody like me and Dan, where you come in the door and we are doing a marketing assessment, we're doing a full audit, we're checking out everything you're doing, we're making our recommendations. Just that alone is going to be, typically $1,000 to $2,000, maybe even more than that, depending on how large your organization is. Because the bigger your company is, the more research we have to do to make sure that the recommendations we're making for you are like really in line with what you guys need to do.
Yep.
Dan, can you speak to that?
Yeah, and one of the variables there is, are we going to also be interviewing your clients?
Which we should be.
Ideally, that's sometimes I get to do that, sometimes I don't. But if I interview some clients, if I interview employees, if I interview strategic partners of yours, referral partners, which is all of those are great. But those take time. You got to line them up, identify who they are, uh, get them on the calendar, all lots of different things, and looking for ultimately a common thread that all these people are saying, or common threads. Um, and that could then take it to another place where you could be talking about, um, you know, more like 5 grand and above, which is not bad because, again, think about it this way. Let's just say this isn't it, but let's just say that it was like 10 grand in order to find out this information. Well, okay, if you really knew what makes you different, why people came to you, why they stay as employees, and what makes you different versus competitors, what's that worth?
Yeah.
And in knowing that, and this is not like opinion stuff necessarily at all. This is directly from the horse's mouth. This is from the people who give you money. So you can sit there and go, oh, well, I don't know about that. Or you can say, well, they must know something about us. They must have this perception. And you don't have to like it, but you do have to understand why there is a gap. And if you're trying to change that perception, knowing right now, you know, before you make a mistake and start doing all these campaigns or things like that, a lot of tactical stuff, wouldn't it be good to know that you've invested to prevent more money going out the door needlessly? And so I
Yes.
think that's a really, really important thing. If you look at this only as, wow, that sounds expensive, and you don't have any context at all of what that is giving you and helping you avoid, then you don't know what expensive or cost effective is
Hmm.
at all. Like,
Yeah.
so I think you have to judge it in that light. And then on an ongoing basis, let's say beyond the strategy, okay, the question could be like, I think you were going here is, what are you building in house and what are you contracting out? So let's talk real dollars here.
Hmm.
In the city of Chicago, at least, if you want to hire a CMO, you better have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars ready to go on a salary. If you want to, let's say, hire a marketing manager, you could be looking at $100,000 or more if they're good. Oh, and you think the coordinator is just going to look at, say, 25 or 30 grand? Not if they're good.
I don't know
So
anybody who can
I
survive on that.
no, they
So,
can't survive on that. That's another thing. But, you know, go to, this isn't the only source, but if you simply go to salary.com as a, not a definitive thing, but look at that and say to yourself, can I afford this kind of person for what it's describing? And then if the answer is no, which is fine, then you kind of know, here's what I need and here's what I can comfortably spend. And let me just say to all the people out there who go, I don't know what I should spend when we're having this conversation, yeah, you do. You know at least this much. You know what makes you uncomfortable and makes you tighten up with fear. And then you know the thing that you could comfortably set aside every single month in kind of, let's say, a flat rate, an ongoing rate. And don't tell me that you don't have those feelings. So your body language will tell you at a minimum of what is comfortable. And then you can also obviously think about, what do I literally have to invest in towards this? So,
yeah. And, you know, when you think about the cost of bringing in a CMO full time plus benefits, I
oh
mean,
yeah,
that's really me and Dan, what we do that, but a fraction of it which is why we're
Yeah.
called
Yeah.
fractional CMOs. So, being able to have that level of expertise and know-how, and also understanding how the implementation gets done as well as the strategy, all of that for, a part-time contractor, like that's an incredible value to businesses that a lot of businesses don't even know that that's even an option.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we're trying to educate people more on, the options that are out there for businesses that really want to start scaling, but, really can't afford a $250,000 a year salary plus all the perks and the benefits and everything at the end of the day. So, really
Yeah.
consider that.
Yeah. And I have to mention this though too, is the other side, which is being a total cheapskate and trying to get somebody who, you're basically giving the keys to your Ferrari to a 14-year-old. So in other words, what I see sometimes is this ridiculous kind of thing of, can't we just get a college kid? Can't we just do
Ugh.
this? Can't we just? And so, you know, uh, I could go on and on about that, but
Oh, I know you could.
it's really like, hey, do you care about what people think in terms of your brand? So when you think, oh, I'm going to have college kid do social media, great. They don't have any sense. They say, well, I'm on TikTok, so you should be on TikTok too. It's really hot. Like, or yeah, they don't have a strategic bone in their body. They don't know anything about where you should be. They just kind of go and with what they think is hot. And they also could post some stuff because they're not as, in tune with what your audience wants. Maybe they'll just try to post some stuff that is totally not in line with your brand. So think about that too, is you want professionals. You
Yeah.
want people who do this all the time. You don't want somebody who kind of uses this as either a hobby or it's a different role entirely from where they are in life, or they're so stinking junior that you're trying to get them to basically learn on the job with some really high end things that are highly visible, which makes them high risk. So I am all for mentoring. I am all for kind of having sort of, you know, growing people from within, but you cannot look at these sort of things that are essential for your brand and go, let's just get,
Just get
so
an
and
intern,
so's
so and so's
so and
college kid.
so's
Yeah.
whatever. Like that, you can't put world class or anything like it on your website and say, I'm going to get a college kid to do this.
Yeah.
Like,
I
cut
mean,
the crap.
everyone, please remember the internet is forever. Like, if you put something out there, if you
Yeah,
put anything out there, it is traceable. Even if you go back and you're like, I'm going to delete that post, like
yeah,
it's out there. Anybody could have
yeah,
screenshotted it. You could go back, the people who run Facebook and Twitter and etc. Like they have access to all of those files. Even if you delete
yeah,
stuff, it's never really gone.
yeah,
So I have seen time and again, like name brands, like household name brands where they're, talk about unhinged, which is like very popular right now in social media, the concept of being unhinged in social media. Like sometimes there's been brands where, their social media person, was very junior and got burned by the company, and the company never like took them off the account, and they just
yeah,
post insane stuff and make a huge PR mess. So yes,
yeah,
Dan, I completely agree with you, as I do
yeah,
on most things, which is make sure that the people that you're putting out there in your marketing, are mature and know what they're doing, and, that you vet them.
yeah,
My favorite thing to do when I find a new contractor that I'm considering working with for my own agency is I pay them to try them out.
yeah,
I'll be
yeah,
like, hey, let's do something. I just did this recently with a social media manager where I was like, you know what? I want you to create content for me, for my brand, for my agency, because I'm gonna invest in you to make sure that it's gonna be good, that you're gonna be trustworthy, that you're gonna be doing things on time, that you're gonna be sticking to the strategy, and the strategy is gonna make sense. So that's another thing you should really consider, is making sure that you're putting the money and trying people out so that you can make sure that they're going to be a good fit for your brand.
Yeah. I think you're right on the money there, because what you will probably, if you have any inkling of building anything from within, like an in-house marketing department, don't just think of the individuals, think of the equipment, think of the software, think of the, all of these things that you probably would have to invest in. And we're not talking about 50 grand or 100 grand. It's probably, you could be talking about 500 grand very quickly with just a few people. And are you prepared to do that? Whereas, and you might have that need, but it will take time. And the flip side of that is you can have not only contract, but you can have a little bit of a mixture too. So it's not an either or kind of thing. I have seen this in-house versus contractor debate, and I'm like, no, there's a thing where you have small marketing departments, and then you hire somebody like us to come in and provide some direction to that department, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not only a third option, it's a very popular one and a very viable one. So I think what you always have to set aside, I go back to this thing of, what is your average sale? How long does it take in terms of your lead time, your process,
your
from
cycle.
start
Yep.
to close? How long does that take? Knowing that can also help you budget a bit, so that you're not blowing a whole wad of cash on things that aren't realistic. And if it takes you 6 weeks, great. Then you've got sort of a goal to go for, and then you know how much possibly to spend. But the thing that you've heard me say this before, let's stop playing the Price is Right on budget, because what happens is, and I come out and I say it, I'm like, okay, so what's a good range that you could see yourself comfortably doing? And if they don't know, I'll suggest maybe a range. But I'm not going to do something where I'm like, oh, I hope this is the number they're thinking of. Like, no, do we like each other? Okay. Are we, finding common ground here, that if all else is equal, it's just a matter of syncing with dollars. Okay. So let's make that happen. Let's say, what is your number, or what is your range that you can set aside comfortably? If you think this is uncomfortable, don't sign the damn contract and go, oh, I don't know, but I'll give it a shot. No, I don't want that. And you don't want that. We want something where you feel good about doing this every single month at a very comfortable number, that we're still good with, but we both feel good about it going in, that there's a good value there for what is being invested in. And so I am a person who is a big fan of the flat rate versus the fluctuating one, with a few, caveats in there. But having that flat rate and coming to an agreement on that will feel so good about the long-term prospect of you having a marketing department, because you need one. It's not a should I have one, or let's try out marketing for 3 months. That's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like
It's a question of when.
Yeah. So go all in, and then realize marketing is not expensive. That's just what some people tell you. What do they know what expensive is? Like, and what do you think is expensive? You haven't probably even asked them. They may think expensive is $20,000 a month, whereas you may have a different number in mind, and you're whatever. It's always relative to your company, your goals, your challenges. No two places are the same when it comes to budgeting.
And with that, we are going to wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm Julie Nichols of Julie Nichols Marketing. You can find me at julienicholsmarketing.com.
And I am Dan Gershenson of Caliber Brand Strategy and Content Marketing. You can find me at highcaliberbranding.com.
And thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time.
See ya.